Hey everybody, still here again today. I'm really glad some of you are still coming along with me. Still building on yesterday. In my experience through this, like I've been dealing with this since the first heart attack. It's been about 4 years. Um, I found usually when I have those awakening moments, those epiphanies, um, they're like hurdles that kind of hold me up, and once I get past them, usually I start flying for a while until I hit it, another major one. And, it was just like that for me yesterday. I had one of those moments that, like, let me realize a few things. And then once I could progress past that, it just kind of builds. I've always been that way, but, you know, because of certain things, ways that I was, born, I have certain gifts. A lot of it is, ADHD, autism, you know. But my intuition and my pattern recognition skills, when they are at peak, it borders on precognitive. Even when they're at a dull point, usually if I see that there's something there, I might not hit the nail on the head as to what it is, but I've yet to be wrong that something is there. That's not a brag. That's just, my experience. That's what I base a lot of my thoughts off of is, hey, if I've been wrong a few times, then I can consider more seriously that I might be wrong in the future. This is where your intuition comes from. You have to learn to trust it. Because if you see that sometimes you think you're following your intuition and it turns out to be wrong, then that wasn't your intuition. That was something else. And you have to learn to decipher between the two. Like, I know the history that I have in my life taught me certain skills. One of the things that helps me do the things that I do is that ability to sit down, break things down, understand them. I talk all the time. I mentioned the other day, one of the things that I know that, nobody can convince me otherwise that I'm a good person is the fact that despite the pain that I felt in my life, when I was younger, I used to lash out. I used to want to share that, and it took me a lot of years of understanding that that's not who I want to be to correct that. And it's a struggle that goes on daily. Like, sometimes that anger does want to come out in the wrong way. And I have had to teach myself habits to try and catch it and slow it down. It's just little things about myself, I repeat all the time, I'm not built for this world. I'm not made for it. And I firmly believe that. And my experiences confirm that, you know. But the fact that I choose, like, I could very easily give up. Like, that's been this whole battle, this depression is. I could easily give up and just not care and not even, put forth the effort for the struggle that I've been going through. But I choose to, again, part of that is because of the belief system. And I really want to do a live soon where I just go on for probably a couple hours just talking about, belief systems that I put in place and the way, my thoughts work, try to explain to other people, the flow of how I connect one thing to another. Um, Sorry, I'm very reflective today. I kind of keep, because I'm still building on thoughts from yesterday. Um, One of my gifts is, that I call it, transmuting. It's a popular term, and it's, but it's when you essentially take one thing and do something with it, and it becomes something else entirely. And that is one of my gifts, is I can take, again, one of the reasons my mask is so believable is, again, that ability, because I take my pain and I turn it into something more palatable, like joy or compassion, or, and I share it. That's how I get rid of it. You have to feel your pain. You do, because it's there for a reason. That's why we have it. But you can't let go. You have to let go of it eventually too. You have to release it. But again, therein comes the choice. Do I release it as I accepted it, as anger, as pain? Do I turn it back on the world the way I received it? Or do I take the time to make it something better before I release it? And that's what I do, and it's one of the things that does genuinely put me at ease. I think one of the misconceptions with dealing with depression is that if you get happy, it'll fix it. And I think that's wrong, because there are moments of, like I said the other day, there's at least 3 times off the top of my head, and we're coming up on a fourth, that, I think that I'm out of this hole and it'll go good for a little while, but then, something will happen, and I'll look around and I'll realize, no, I crawled towards the top. I was almost there, but I let go, and it dropped me back down. I need to get past that. I do a lot of self-sabotage. Again, it's one of the side effects of me trying to fit in a place where I'm not meant to fit in. And that's what I was doing with this past relationship. Was I was afraid, and I was using it as an excuse, and I was letting the pain from it keep me where I was. And yesterday I realized, that I can't keep doing that to myself. I can't have myself in that position where I can make that an option. Again, it's one of those bittersweet realizations. But now, just since having that realization yesterday, I'm able to tap into parts of my mind that I previously I had to meet certain conditions to get to. And now I can kind of get there on my own. So that's a game changer. That's definitely something different. And it's also given me, it's hard to find the word, because it's given me more of a connection with purpose. Because again, purpose is important for everybody. Most people that go through depression, um, they have no sense of purpose, or in my case, they have a sense of purpose, but again, that disease kicks in and it keeps you from fulfilling it. And that's what I was doing. I was letting it win. And, you know your purpose by what makes you feel at peace. That's what I was saying. It's not about happiness, it's about peace. The things that can help quiet what's going on in here, that's what you need to find and focus on. And I know I make that sound easy, and it's not. Because again, one of the downsides of depression is the things that you used to love, you don't love anymore. My woodworking, I used to love to do it, like really. And, that's one of the things people push me to. And I still do it. And I still enjoy it because I'm good at it. It's something, it just melds with me. You know what I mean? It was one of those things that brings me peace. And I still do it. Because there's still those snippets of that there in it. And again, like I was saying yesterday on my walk, you have to do those things. Even if you don't feel the passion for them anymore, you need that reminder. And it's my hope that someday that passion will come back once I get through this. Because again, I still have, when a big battle in depression is making yourself do something to begin with. Like I was talking the other day about self-care. I love it when I'm in the shower. I love the feeling of the water on me. I love just, being in there with my thoughts. And, it's one of those peace-bringing endeavors. But again, the disease tells me, oh, well, you don't need that. You don't deserve that. You don't need to take care of yourself that way. And that's, a big part of surviving depression is discipline. Because part of life is that discipline, doing something when you don't want to. When you have depression, you don't want to take care of yourself. Well, guess what? You still have to. So you have to discipline yourself to make it easier. One thing I've noticed, and I really hated about myself, in the early stages, is I let my entire environment turn into a mess. Like I was never a complete slob, but I was always kind of an organized chaos, like messy person. A lot of people who know me think that I'm like insanely organized, and which I am, but that is an overcompensation. Because again, growing up in the 80s with ADHD, the world doesn't try to understand you. They force you to conform to it. And that was one of the side effects of that. And I'm grateful for it because it's a handy skill to have. But again, there's side effects. That's what this depression is. It's a side effect of me trying to be something that the world wants me to be, but I'm not. And that was the problem with my last relationship, was I spent a lot of time focusing, I wasn't healing for me, I was healing for my partner, or that's what I was telling myself anyway. And I wasn't getting it right because they wanted safety and stability. And I am chaos incarnate. Like I am, that's just the reality. That's how I work. I thrive in chaos. Again, that's part of the ADHD. So we were not compatible. Again, I will never trash talk. She was an amazing woman, absolutely deserves the best in this world, but it just wasn't going to work. And it's unfortunate. But now that I have had that realization, that I have accepted that, it's letting me move forward. So, I know I'm going over time here. I just hit the 15-minute mark, but and I know I've been stumbling, but it was to lead to this thought. It finally came to me. Is you have to, not fake it till you make it, but don't let yourself go into those patterns. Because again, one of those things that fed into my self-hatred was when I got slovenly. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't taking care of my environment. I was letting things pile up. And I had a moment, one of those epiphanies where I realized, well, one of the things feeding my depression is I'm so pissed off at myself because I look around and I see this mess around me and I've let it, create, come to being, and I'm not doing anything about it, but it's irking the shit out of me. And it was one of those times that, I didn't feel like cleaning up, but I made myself do it. And then after I did it, there was that sense like I had fulfilled something, like I had accomplished something. And even though it didn't make me feel good about myself, it did get me a little closer to that peace that I was seeking. So I have taught myself to discipline myself. Old habits die hard. Again, the disease, the way it works is it tricks you into putting your own mind against yourself. So I had to catch myself all the time. But I try to, again, some people say, must think that I'm borderline OCD because of some of the ways that I do things. And that's a joke I've had for years. That was one of my actually first realizations about myself is, that nitpickiness about keeping order. That is not something that I was born with. That is something that, that was one of the first things that I taught myself because of that conformity, that trying to fit in. And here's another paradox about me is part of my pain is because I don't fit in. But the catch-22 of that is I don't want to fit in. Because when I try to change myself to conform to what I think everybody wants me to be, I'm unhappy. I'm extremely unhappy. It's not like, that's not for me. I don't like, no, I really rebel against it. So yeah, that's definitely one of those things to keep in mind when you're dealing with this. But anyway, I've gone, over time. Again, that's one of the things I'm trying to curb and correct about myself. But hopefully it helps somebody. Hopefully it reached the right ears. We're gonna do this. We're gonna get through this. I don't want to give anyone false hope, but logically, if we keep working at it, people keep picking at, I tell people all the time, they shut down when they have problems. Don't do that. Don't let yourself do that. I know it's hard, but you gotta force yourself, to be brave enough to look at the thought and break it down. You have to be annoying. You have to nurture your inner child and be annoying. Every answer you find, your inner child, they're quite, why? Like a 2-year-old, a toddler just trying to figure out the world. But why? And then you explain it. But why? And then you explain again. But why? And you keep going. Yeah, you have to be like that with yourself. Because that's how you get to the root of, what have I been taught that isn't true? What am I basing myself, what is the hurdle that I am not able to get past? How do I get it out of my way? And that's how you find it. That was where my journey really started. And that's what keeps me going. Because a large part of peace is acceptance. If you can't accept something, then you have to change it. But you have to understand it, You have to study it. You have to work with the reality of what it is in order to change it. So no matter what, you have to go through this process if you want to get past it anyway. Otherwise, you're constantly going to be standing in front of that hurdle and never go any further. And that's, really how it works. Anyway, way over time. Catch you guys in the next one. Hopefully, all of us will be back tomorrow. Have a good one.